Everybody, you caught me right in the middle of cleaning up my delve deck here, my trusty delve deck. I've been trying to use it to try some things out in preparation for this video on dungeon delving and solo play. But before I get to new business, I just wanted to take a minute to give you a peek at this gorgeous adventure setting called the Ballads of Orad. I got it last week, and I've been wanting to talk about it all weekend, but I couldn't because I have been suffering with what I would consider the most devastating of the dark triad of horrible things that randomly happen to your body, and that would be I've had a canker sore, and it's on my tongue. And so I haven't been able to do anything. The other two things in the dark triad would be canker sores, random leg cramps in the middle of the night, and hiccups that you can't stop. Like you just can't. So I think canker sores are the worst. It's this tiny little point on your body, yet all of your attention and focus is on that tiny point 24/7. You can't talk, you can't eat, you can't swallow, you can't swallow your own spit. Your own spit. You certainly can't record a video. And even worse, nobody wants to hear about it. I know this is not good for ratings, but it's ridiculous. You can complain about having a cold. You can't complain about a canker sore. I'd rather have a cold than a canker sore. I'd rather have a bad cold than a canker sore. So I'm just thankful that I had to spend this whole weekend canked out in my home. Wasn't able to do anything. Everything was agonizing. I couldn't talk, which is, basically a death sentence to me. And the only thing that got me through this weekend is this beautiful book. I mean, look at the binding on this. It's gorgeous. And I have to be honest, if I hadn't ordered it from where I ordered it, I don't know if it would have been here as fast as it was and so well packaged. So I just want to take a moment here to thank today's sponsor who, they saved my life. Thank you so much to Noble Knight Games for being a sponsor of the Man Alone YouTube channel. Since 1997, Noble Knight Games has been serving the needs of gamers just like you and me. They specialize in both new and out-of-print RPGs, board games, war games, collectible card games, miniatures, and all things game-related. And yes, that includes solo RPGs too. At Noble Knight, they take pride in providing great experiences for their customers. Whether you're shopping in their brick-and-mortar store up in Fitchburg, Wisconsin, or through their easy-to-use website, you're going to see that pride reflected in every step of the process. If you shop with them, here's what you can count on. You're going to get discounted pricing, easy and secure checkout, fast and friendly customer service, worldwide shipment, and, most important to an RPG fiend like myself, they have a huge selection. That's right, Noble Knight wants you to have the best gaming experience possible, and the most important step for that is to have the game. So to assist you in that, they regularly carry rare and out-of-print games. Games that are so rare, you probably didn't even know they existed, such as Brian's Confusion. So go ahead and look for yourself by clicking on the link below. If the game you're looking for isn't in the store right this minute, go ahead and add it to your wish list. They're going to email you as soon as it becomes available, and very often, that happens sooner than you think. And I'm telling you from personal experience, you're going to be amazed at how dynamic and responsive their inventory is. When you are ready to check out, you can expect that your order is going to be carefully packed and shipped promptly, in many instances the same day you place your order. All the items listed on their website, unless listed as pre-order or special order, are in stock and ready to go. As always, they offer a satisfaction guarantee, so go ahead, click the link down in the description. Noble Knight Games, where the out-of-print, say it with me, come on, where the out-of-print is available again. Thank you, Noble Knight Games, for sponsoring the Man Alone YouTube channel. And now, back to the studio. No, but for real, it's pretty incredible. So these are from Free League. This is a personal data sheet, like character sheet, and it's just a pad. I love having these for games. This makes me want to play a game times 300% to just be able to rip off a character sheet and start going. And also they have one for the hub, and I think it's 40, 50 sheets. I've never seen these in my life. They're literally Free League. You can't see that, but it's FLFDI, and they're not even on Free League's website anymore. I've never seen them, and so I ordered. They're sponsors. I was like, yeah, let me try this out, see what the experience is like. It was they literally dispatched it 5 seconds after my order was placed, and it was here in a couple of days. So 5 out of 5 stars, would recommend and have recommended. Thank you, Noble Knight Games. But this one was a total gamble on my part because I just looked at it and was like, I've never seen that before. What is that? And then I looked up to see if there were any like videos on it. I mean, it came out in 2024, so not long ago, a few days ago, or sometime from a year to a few days ago. And it it's just beautiful. But the only thing I could find was an interview with the author, who's Jean Demers. So it's OSC compatible, and it's like an adventure setting, and it's the layout of it is it basically is like art here, and then something on the other side. For the most part, there's like a little bit extra here with some maps and stuff, all hand drawn. There's just so many tiny details in this, and it's so beautiful. I mean, it is kind of that thing that toes the line between art and gameplay. But I think that given that half of the book is gameplay, the art is, it's well balanced, so to speak. So yeah, it's just like you pick out watercraft, you have different weather options, all this. Like, look at this equipment page. How awesome is that? It's almost the world that this author created. It's one of those. It was similar to the feeling I had when I opened Ultraviolet Grasslands, where I was like, "Oh, this world has existed in this person's head for a long time, and they didn't create this world for me. They're just like opening the door and letting me see a little bit of it." And because of that, and I know this sounds very pretentious, but it's like very earnest art. It's not the best art I've ever seen, but that's what makes it so good. Is like it's Jean Demers art, and um, I just think it's such like a vivid personal vision, and I really mean that. I really mean that. I'm not just like saying those words because I feel that a lot of art in games. Luckily, I think tabletop RPGs as like a segment, a small segment of the culture economy, does pretty well with this. But so many things now, you can tell that the art that was done for it was something that started out with an idea like this, and then it just kept getting pulled into the graphic design of the day direction, where it's just like, oh, make it a little bit more rounded. Oh, make it a little bit, make the hair like three of those like squiggled lines. And by the end of it, you have that like vacant modern graphic design where people are just like bubbles and their feet come to points and everything looks like that. And so I just really appreciated, and some of it seems like a comic, almost like a graphic novel. Um, but it's just, I'm very glad that I got it. And you can too on Noble Knight, uh, if you follow the link below. But yeah, and then as I was looking through this only heightened my feelings that have been swimming within me regarding the subject of this video, because I think part of it is I did not um, come up through the pathways that other people my age have entered this hobby, right? I came to it later, and then I left it for a while, and then I came back later again, and then focused primarily on solo play and only played D&D out of necessity um, for a few years, and then was very happy to find alternatives to that. But there is this tremendous wealth that's available, and a lot of generosity with the knowledge that people have who have been in the hobby since 1978, and they can sort of talk about the progression of things from like first edition to 3.5 BX, and then when things started to change and when there was like something in the water that signified that a change would happen later. And I think one of the things that I miss out on is like, I understand what everything here says. Like, I understand what THACO is and stuff, but I understand what alignment lawful means. But I think when there's a person who's been playing that long, when they look at all of this, like a stat block like this, they have an instantaneous recognition that is similar to what people who read music must feel, right? When you like look at a piece of music and they just read it like a language, you know? Um, and if I were to play this, I would still have to like sort of work through some things in my head and um, because it's just not a system that I spent every Friday and Saturday night using during the formative years. That's especially important because as an adult, of course, you could still learn things, but you do not have the patience or the bandwidth to focus, to do this sort of deep learning that lets you have the intuitive knowledge of something. In fact, it's so hard to do that you have to like get a degree to do that. And so, and even then, I don't know if it always happens. And so I just, I want to be able to access so much of this kind of stuff. And I think two ways that really manifests itself is as point crawl adventures and dungeon delves or mega dungeons. And if you've been following my posts recently, or if you're a member of SEAL Team Waffle Alpha on the Discord, been talking about just like this desire that's been welling up in me to explore both as a dungeon itself and as like a theme or a concept, mega dungeons. And so I did what I usually do when these kind of things pop up in me is I start doing my research, and I like to identify like what the problem is. I think that that's a big I think some people would say that that's a very counterproductive thing to do, and for some people it may well be. But for me, once I've zeroed in on what the exact problem is, I can start to consider solutions, and I can also start to consider like where solutions may not be possible or may not always be possible. So the way I wanted to structure this video, um, because I don't, I have some ideas on how we can make uh, mega dungeon, hex crawl, solo dungeon delves that are of the point crawl variety. And I'll be more specific about this. More soloable, but I don't have like a definitive system yet. I am sort of learning and thinking on camera here. So we'll start by talking about the areas that I've identified as challenges, and then we'll talk about some ways that we might overcome those challenges. And then at the end, if everything goes in order, I'll talk about maybe things I'm still thinking about and considering and would love your input on. So I am just going to clear this off, and I'm going to reset my play space here with some examples of things that I've been looking at during my canker sore monastic time this weekend. Okay. Oh, really quick, just so I don't forget. It also comes with it's like a little paper folder. It's not much, but it's a really nice 3-part GM screen that it comes with as well in the package with it. So really, really cool, really good buy. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, so first things first, when we're talking about going underground to the underworld, the first thing that you have to read is the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I'm kidding. I did get this today. This is I read this, fascinating, and incorporated some of it into the sequel to Vox Gravis, which hopefully should be available next week. Keep your ears tuned. No, you don't need to read that or the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but just to clarify something, I am not referring to solo dungeon generation, or at least I'm trying not to. Okay, and what I mean by that is when I ask like, how can we make uh, um, dungeon delves or mega dungeons? How can we make those? How can we convert them into soloable um, supplements? I am well aware that there is a way to do away with that and just say like, well, there's plenty of games that will present you with the tools you need to create a dungeon, right? And so, like 2D6 Dungeon, Dungeon World, got this one completed the set here, Trophy Gold, Ironsworn Delve, Sandbox Generator, Caernathalis. These are games that provide instructions for you. One Ring, Moria, right? You can use these and you can walk from room to room and generate each room and randomize it, etc. I understand that and I like that. And we will definitely use elements of that. But so that I'm being specific about what I'm talking about, this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this and this and even this. Kind of cute, actually. And sure, this. I'm even talking about like an overland hex map, like that, which is usually not as set as something like a mega dungeon. Now, what you're looking at right here is the map pack from Gunderholfen, which is a mega dungeon and mini campaign setting that is compatible with what do you say, Osric, old school reference in something compatibility. And this, I think, first of all, I did choose this one. There are a lot of recommendations I got. Arden Vull, there's some other ones. I did see at my FLGS Scarlet Citadel, maybe it was called. There's a couple of like Hallmark ones. I understand that there's one for RuneQuest called Big Rubble. So lots of different options, lots of polarizing opinions on it. Some people say not worth your time. But whatever it is, I just love, in theory, the idea of a mega dungeon. Okay, and what I love about it is that you have this map, and you print out this map. Right, you got a big old map here, and you're gonna print it out, and you can color it in, or it's all numbered, so you take notes on each one of these, and you proceed through it. And I'll tell you the comment um, that really got me, and I think it's on this game on Drive Through RPG. Somebody commented and they said, "Awesome! I've been working my way through some other mega dungeon for about 2 years, and I'm almost done." And I was like, "Wow! Like one dungeon, 2 years." And I mean, they're not messing around, because nor are they exaggerating. I know that because Arden Vull is, I think, 5 books, and all told, over 1,000 pages. And so it's not like this is all I want to solo play. I mean, obviously, in some ways, this is the type of solo play that I would say I'm not too interested in. Right? It doesn't allow for as much creativity. It feels a little bit like a board game, etc. But the more I was thinking about this, and the more that I was considering different ways to add narrative elements into this, I was thinking that maybe this deserves another look from the standpoint of solo play, to see how it can be done well. And I know it's done. Like, people do it. There are people on YouTube that have, I think I always say the wrong thing. It's Barrow Maze. Barrow Maze was another one that I was looking at, and there's people just working through it, and they're doing the things that I would do, right? They're entering a room and they're reading what they see, and then they're getting to a place that would indicate a gap of knowledge between the GM and the player, right? So some sort of thing that the GM knows and that the players don't know, and if the players make good choices, they could maybe know that and then get the benefits of that, whether that's to like avoid a trap or whether that's to, you know, get some sort of reward or something like that, right? So, I mean, right here at the top, pit trap. At the bottom of the stairs lies a 10-foot deep pit trap. Roll d6 for each person stepping on it. On a 1 to 3, it'll flip open. So that one, this is probably more of like the first ones are a little bit more tutorial, I think. That one's right out front and center, right? But then you have stuff. Let's see here. Well, you know, I think even something as simple as like, what are the tactics of a foe, right? And so that's an information gap. Like the GM is going to know that, the players won't. The players won't be able to prepare to when they're going into the altar room, for example. They're not going to know that the kobold shaman is going to cast darkness. And then up here, if there's no offer of parlay given, the guards will engage the PCs. So if you read that as a solo player, you're like, okay, well, you know, I mean, if you read that as a solo player and didn't know any better, perhaps you'd say, oh, well, I guess then I'll just parlay, right? And then what happens? You go, well, that doesn't feel very fair, right? Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to have the same experience that I would have if I was playing in a group. And that is true. And there are a couple things that are true here. Number one, that's true. You know, like I think a lot of people do solo play so that they can have the same types of emotional experiences that they have, emotional and intellectual experiences that they have while playing in a group. That is true. What is also true is that solo play has its own intellectual and emotional enjoyments, you know. And the third thing that's true is that some things you maybe cannot, they're not able to be translated over to solo, or they're not able to be translated well, or they're not able to be translated well enough to go through the work of translating them over. And what I mean by that is, suppose I saw that on this page that the guards, I could have offered parlay, okay, or parley, whatever you like to say there, and I can say, wow, that's information that I would have not preferred to know, right? I would have gradually wanted to unfold that information, and so, you know, what I'll do is in my solo game that I'm making, I will take all of the words that are under tactics or anything that reveals a trap or anything like that, and I'll have somebody turn all of those text segments upside down, so that when I'm reading them, I can't read it unless I turn it over, right? And in a way that's kind of clever, right? Because you know when you reach a certain age in reading proficiency, you're pretty much on like auto read. You know what? I got to put some more Kankersaur stuff on. Kanka, Kanka. That's the secret. We're back, baby. Okay, so yeah, on the next page here, this is a good example. This hobgoblin is a prisoner and is near death from his wounds. He will try to flee as soon as the cell is open. He may provide information if the PCs offer to release him. He will only fight if attacked. So I say, okay, well, I will take that and I'll put it in like disappearing ink, or I will redact it and I will only look at it once I choose an action or something. You could do that, but this book, which is sort of on the smaller side for MegaDungeons, is 400 plus pages. And then also, is that effort worth it, right? And also, can you do that without auto reading it, like while you're doing it, right? And so there's a little bit of a conundrum here in my mind when you want to do these, because you're going to have to change them. That's obvious, right? You're going to have to change them around to solo play. But there begins to be a little bit of a Theseus's ship problem, right? And I know I've mentioned this before, but just because I think it fits very well here, and I think this is broadly speaking, the Theseus's ship problem exists in a lot of solo play, and what that is like museum gets a ship. It's called the Ship of Theseus, and boy, can you believe it? We have the actual ship of Theseus here. Let's put it on display. We put it on display. Well, it looks okay, but it's really old, as ships are. But we'll just replace some of the pieces that are breaking, and we'll make them look just like the ones that they're replacing, so it won't even be noticeable. And then over the years, every year they replace a little bit more of the ship, until the point that there is one original piece left, and they replace it. At what point did it stop being Theseus's ship? Okay, so like you could say, oh, well, the minute the last piece is replaced, but that's kind of ridiculous, right? Because that means like if think of a ship as big as like a cruise ship. So you're saying 1 square inch of the original means that that whole ship is still the same ship, right? So I mean, there's no correct answer here, but the point I'm getting at is sometimes when we're adapting games to solo play, we start to change them little bit to make it work. But sometimes we change them so much that we might start asking ourselves, like, is this the same game? Or is the game I'm playing so different that I might as well just be playing another game or just playing this out in my mind randomly, right? But it's not only a question of like aesthetic or of lore or whatever, authenticity. It's also a question of um, narrative and the problems that might be created as you tinker with things. And I think the mega dungeon or the dungeon delve, I think that really puts a lot of those problems on display. It exposes those problems. And I'm thinking that listing those problems and talking about them could give us a better idea of how to approach it. Okay. So just to be clear, again, I'm being very clear over and over again today. Some examples of stuff, right? They don't all have to be like huge mega dungeons. Gradient Descent. Now, this is by Luke Gearing, Sean McCoy, the original crew. And I think this would qualify as a mega dungeon. I mean, it's quite small. It's from Mothership, 63 pages plus the back cover. So this is all the rooms here. I think that this is a really, really great, they call it a module, the massive abandoned android factory. I think the content of this is great. I think at some points the aesthetic, it goes too into the aesthetic to the point that like this just feels so crowded here. But I think that that's a secondary consideration, and that the actual content of it is really what is awesome about this. So that's an example. I just picked up Knave 2nd edition, and I did make a post about this. I know that a lot of people wanted me to check out Knave. And I have had Maze Rats, both of them by Ben Milton, and that's Questing Beast, right? And so I still have yet to fully open her up, right? But I will concede that it's not a solo tool, but my good gravy, does this have so much, like, I'm not certain of many solo oracles that have this much stuff in them. It is like unbelievable and very affordable. And then you add Maze Rats to that, which again is like 25 pages, but pound for pound, like the amount of stuff that you're getting here. I mean, I don't really know about the game. Like I said, I gotta play around with that a little bit more, but it's incredible. So they do have this Rake Hell, which now that I think about it, it says it's issue 1, but is that it? Like, did they not make a second one? Wow. Well, I just that pause was no seconds for you, but I would just spent like 20 minutes reading about this. So this is actually made by Goatman's Goblet, and boy, I was just reading the list of. It sounds like this dude Brian had a really tough time, and so he thinks that the second one is still on the way, but it's tough. And probably take you time. You could read that if you want. He's just. But there is a preview for issue 2, and there is like 2 supplements. One of them is called Rake Hell, the Battlefield, and one is Through Borderlands. This just feels like something I'm not saying right, that somebody in the comments is going to be like, it's Rakahel. So sorry, Rake Hell. Yeah, this is a knave adventure point crawl, right? But this is has more generative tools, and it's more about just like the listed entries. It's really cool, actually, and again, was like not too much. Misremember. Hold on, let me open it with both hands. One second. Yeah, so it would also include things like this in an adventure generator. Like you just have a mini location, the manse and the bandits manse, and anywhere where there's like locations listed, a map, and then there's potentially events that happen there. Now, I think I wanted to show this one because I think that this is a good example of a middle place where generators can be used for filling in the spaces that are not fully filled in by the entry. Okay, so if in Gunderholfen, another one that I'm probably it's Gunderholfen, you have the walls are draped in wall hangings and covered in crude kobold graffiti, little of which can be made out, except the pictures of kobolds triumphing over goblins can be recognized. Concealed exit. So rather than, and this is like what Alone in Deep Fall Breach does. Rather than saying this room has a concealed exit, your players have to roll a successful observation check or whatever to see it. The generator approach to this would be you go into the room and it's like, what's there? And you roll on a table that shows exit and one of them is concealed, etc. But again, there's a fine line there, because if we make every room totally open like that, it takes away a little bit of what makes the idea of the dungeon delve special, right? Which is having this experience that already exists. It's already out there somewhere existing. And then you're entering into it and you're interacting with all of these things. Now, this is a campaign module K2, Dwellers of the Bog. And if you're familiar with this by Dungeons Key, I think it's really cool. It's to look like the old, well, actually, I'll show you what it looks like. Now, this was a gift from Orc Knuckles, friend of the channel, and was not supposed to be a gift. It was supposed to be we were trading up to get Mr. 55, the podcast for this for members on this channel, co-host, trying to trade up things to get him. I think it was a speedboat, but I know that we traded shoes for this, and then we had no further offers. So if you have an offer for a trade for this, but this is from 1980 TSR, and it's like an introductory module, and so these were made to look like that. and it's really, really nice. Has 5 extra classes. And I have to say, what's interesting about this is the layout of it, rather than being, I mean, it's very Merkborg in sort of like flavor, the enemies and the weapons and the story is very grimdark, so to speak. But it actually looks like the inside of Into the Odd, really beautifully well laid out, which for Morkborg is like, I liked it so much that I got the first one coming. I ordered it because it just looks really great to me. But this is a good example of, a healthy size dungeon here. And it's labeled, it's a little bit difficult to see, but it's like you could see right there F5, F6, and then you just refer down. And I know probably for a lot of you, you already know this stuff. I'm just trying to make sure that everybody understands what we're talking about. So F5 is the sacred tree. It's 50 feet by 50 feet. The air is filled with the dissonant warbling of songbirds in the glade. In the glade, 2d6 undead wolves rest near a colossal oak tree, which soars 100 feet. Its trunk bears a large abscess oozing sticky sap. At the tree's base is a burrow with heaps of earth pushed to either side. And so these are things that you wouldn't say right away until your players ask about it. The tree appears to be dying with splotchy bark peeling off in swaths, while its branches are leafless and limp. Within the abscess is a sickly mass of pus and crystallized sap formed around a splinter-like shard of oxidized metal. Touching the blade tip floods the PC with visions, and then see lore. Right. And so then you would refer to like the lore and you would tell them some of the visions of it. Right. And it goes on 6 things that maybe your players get all 6 of them. Maybe they only notice or interact or succeed on 4 of them. But the general the governator, the limiting factor here is the GM as arbiter. The GM determines if the players have successfully met the criteria needed to release information to them, to give them advantages, or to confront them with disadvantages or whatever, right? So what do we do about that in solo play? What do we do about knowing that if we touch the blade tip of the tree, we get a vision? How do we make that fun if we just read it instead of discovering it, right? So the discovery is not there, but where else is? Another one here, Arcos, is actually compatible with a game system I really should be using more, which is Troika. And this is a nice laid out dungeon as well in classic Troika style, very unique. It's both simple and strange, but it has very, very cool sort of, maybe it's not really cyberpunk, it's like alien. Like everything with Troika is it's like it's happening on another like dimension. But lots of a good balance in here of describing things, but also having just randomized scenes to encounter. And I think in terms of solo play, something like this is going to be much easier than this, and is going to be a lot easier than Gunderholfen in terms of adaptation. And the reason for that is one of the reasons we're going to talk about, one of the challenges, which is the if you randomize things, you're going to have to do a lot of retconning, right? You're going to have to keep fixing the narrative, which some people won't mind. Some people don't mind. And then the Isle of the Plangent Mage, another one. This one, again, only like, what is it? Really cool art in these. 50 pages or so, but really nice. You got like the large maps here, each level laid out here, and then you just go from room to room, see what's in there. And this one is even more explicit. Well, I don't want to go that far. I don't want to spoil anything. Let's go to a more So rumors, those are really good. Random happenings, those are really good for solo play. Yeah, so the shining light, creature of the depths, 15 feet long, translucent, rows of multicolored lights down body, nearly human face. Okay. Origin, behavior, reaction. If attacked, she could fight or retreat down the tube back to the ocean. So what do we do with that? And then finally, this one by Philip Jensen from BB. It was a birthday present. I love you, BB. This is a very good Merkborg dungeon, and of course a random piece of tape that's just placed in here like by the publishers. I think that's by the publishers, unless it was like, it's kind of funny. I wonder if this is intentional or if this was like, hey, we printed something in error, just put a sticker over this before it comes out the door. Well, I'll do that later. That's kind of funny. Yeah, but so this is a dungeon adventure as well. So we're talking about things that encompass mega dungeons, dungeon crawls, dungeon delves, point crawls, anything, to be specific, anything where you are generating some stuff, but for the most part, each location you enter has things that are readily apparent and things that are not apparent. And the things that are not apparent are regulated by the GM. If the players make the right choices, achieve the correct dice rolls, they are revealed. And so the question is, what makes this so hard to solo? All right. So let's start number one. All right, let me spell this out with my one-handed keyboard here. Combat encounters. Combat encounters. So you'll notice this is the first of the sort of challenges of adapting TTRPGs to solo play. No GM. All right. And most of these are divided up by the different types of encounters. So that's actually how I went about this. I went about this by writing an exhaustive list of every component that can be encountered. And then I looked at each of those encounters and I was like, what are the problems or the potential problems here? Okay. So the first one, we have combat encounters. Well, this is an issue in any solo game that's adapted in solo. Enemy behavior, determining how they react, how they move without a GM to interpret their actions, and beyond just their first choices, how they're going to dynamically react, how the changing conditions of the combat will modify their reactions, etc. Surprise attacks, hard to simulate any genuine surprise, since the solo player knows that it's either scripted or it's determined by a random number. Okay. And so just to put a little pin in that here, to look at that from the subjective experience of that. All right. That's what I'm talking about. Because we're not trying to copy paste mechanics. That's like something that we use as a tool. What we're actually trying to do when we adapt a game to solo play is copy paste feelings or puzzles or intellectual challenges, right? So any sort of surprise, there's always a second piece of surprise, which is delight, right? When there's no stakes, like if I walk into my house and somebody's standing there, that's not a delight. But I'm saying, why do people get excited when, there's new enemies in their favorite game? Those are challenges, right? They shouldn't be excited about that, but they're like, oh, new challenges to take on, right? So surprises, getting a surprise, it puts you on your heels. It tests your level of readiness before you were able to actually sit and think about it. If it's done well, it ungates a lot of adrenaline because you're like, wow, I really have no choice here. Everything up to this point I had a choice in, now I don't have a choice. And then beyond that, in terms of combat, we're looking at balance, adjusting difficulties, scaling the enemies, the combat could be too hard or too easy. And then that sort of weird solo guilt of like, am I making this too easy on myself? Oh, well, I will reverse the other direction and I'll make it too hard on myself, which is something that happens to me. Well, not really the second one anymore, but whenever I would be like, oh man, I gotta lose some pounds after the holidays here or something, and I would download my Fitness Pal or something, and I would log things, and you would look, you'd be like, okay, I just ate a slice of pizza, and then you type in pizza, and it was like, well, was it small, medium, or large? And you're like, well, let's see here. Small was 80 calories, medium was 120, and large is 200. And you're like, it was pretty small. It was pretty small. So you put in small, and then you eat another piece, and you're like, I don't think that was small. And you're like, you know what? I can't be. This is what I've always been doing. I can't do it this time. No. And so you change them both to large, and now you have 400 calories worth of pizza when in reality, it was 250, and then you're starving later because you overdid it. If you have that sort of reaction, but either way, you make it too hard or too easy. And so balance. In combat, we see two big things here that are gonna show up several times. So I talk about them a little more right now, but that's balance or leveling and reactive behaviors, reactivity. All right, number two. Number two is, why does this work? Puzzles and traps. Not trapoo. Traps. Okay, so puzzles and traps. This is where we really see the problem of inequality of information. So puzzles rely on. So if there's a puzzle that relies on a solution that is one that's like a Rubik's Cube, right? Like solving a legitimate puzzle, then that's fine. But I don't know how many games are like, oh, you see this door and it has an old etching on it, and it's a labyrinth like you used to in grade school. So go ahead and try and trace from the beginning again. If you get it under 30 seconds, you get in. Maybe they should do that. I do know I have seen games that have stuff like this. There was that one game that wanted, again, I always bring this up. I feel bad for it because it was a nice game, and actually, one time the guy reached out and was like, "Hey, can you feature my game?" And I was like, "Oh man, I already did." And he's like, "Oh, it's not selling." So maybe I should. Anyways, I'll look it up. I'll try to post it. But it had something where you like literally took no, I think it was with dice. Yeah, it was with dice. I'm definitely not going to be able to do it right now with my hand, but it was like you had to take two dice, or you had to take three dice or something, and then you had to take another one, and you had to like flick it and knock it over, and then like the roll from that, or if you didn't hit it. And those are the kind of things that I'm not sure on a long-term campaign that I have a lot of patience for, because eventually I'll just be like, well, why am I going through this? It's kind of like in a video game where uh, there's a difference when something is challenging because it's challenging, and because it makes you think, and it makes you become better. I think that that's really valuable. But then there are things in games where you're doing them and you're like, do I really have to do this? I forget if it was which Final Fantasy it was. You just had to run around and make these deliveries over and over and over. And I'm going, I don't, I don't want to do this. And at the time, I was working for a company where I did something very similar. Then I come home at the end of the day and I have to make more deliveries with Cloud Strife or whatever. And so I was just very annoyed by that. But I don't know. Maybe there is like puzzle type, like legit puzzle type puzzles that could be incorporated. But a lot of puzzles are ones that are called puzzles, but they actually involve like asking questions, investigating, using skills. And obviously, this requires an inequality of information. I don't know how to categorize them. Maybe I'd call them like Sphinx puzzles, right? Like riddles, but not always riddles, but like the players needing to ask the right questions. And then also that dynamic interplay between the GM and the player where they're kind of helping them, but they don't want to make it completely easy for them. That all is happening inside your head. Uh, Traps, I mean, I think this is fairly obvious, but just so that we're we get it all out there. Traps can't really hide a trap, right? You're going to encounter in the text something that says there's a trap, roll on it. You can't say, "Hey, 5 minutes ago you stepped over a trap. What did you do?" Well, that's kind of interesting, actually. Well, no. So yeah, there's no element of surprise or discovery. They already know the solution, and so it makes puzzles. This is what it is. It makes puzzles feel mechanical instead of engaging. Okay. All right. Number three. All right. Number three is. Let's type it out first, so we get the big surprise reveal. All right. Number three is exploration. Okay. So let's just get it right out there. Number one, it's difficult to air quotes discover a secret passage. Solo player already knows it's there. Okay. Decision making. Which path you want to take? Well, it can feel quite forced, right? Because the outcomes are either known, technically known, or it's difficult to think about how they wouldn't be known, right? I mean, I suppose that the first time going through, and maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's part of the puzzle here is that really like if you want to play a point crawl, you can only play it once and play it, for the first time and not read ahead. But it can feel forced when let me give an example here. I mean, I think there's like a very easy way to just dismiss a lot of this stuff that I'm saying right now. Like, oh, well, why don't you do this? Okay. But let me just ask you this here. You're on this page right now. I don't even know what it says over here. But I want you to just pretend that you're looking at this page. And it's the first time you're looking at this page. You've just opened it to this page. And you read here, and it says, you see some ripples on the water. Do you want to investigate them? Are you think you're not going to see this? Just a little. I mean, and truly, I don't even know if this thing is good or bad, but I would not want to meet that. But supposing it maybe is some fae or something like that, that question becomes very different when I have this like hovering next to me. That's all I'm saying. And then this is actually what I think would be one of the most frustrating things is backtracking. And this is I know the way that I know this is from playing lone wolf games when I was a kid, or even just any choose your own adventure. Like when you got sent back to a place in a choose your own adventure, you didn't read it again. You just kind of like looked and flipped and flipped and flipped and flipped until you got to the one that you were at, and then you made a different choice, right? And so when you have a GM backtracking, rerouting, this feels like a narrative choice. It feels like real, right? Oh, well, we tried going down this path, and it turns out there was a door there. It was wrought iron. It was rotted shut or rusted shut, and it couldn't get through it, or couldn't get through it right now. So maybe we got to find a key. Maybe we have to, find a tool. Let's go back. But what does that feel like when you're solo playing? You're like, okay, so now I've got to go back through these rooms again. And I think most of the time you're just going to like fast travel, and which is maybe fine, but I mean, that's part of the game is making choices and dealing with the consequences of those. And from a meta perspective, it's like not having to deal with any consequences is always a feature of solo play, but it comes into like, what is it? Harsh relief, severe focus when you're doing a hex crawl or a dungeon. Okay. Let's just keep going here. Number next. Social encounters. So number one, this is, again, obviously not something that is exclusive to this. However, I've had a lot of conversations with people about how to make something like, say, what is the name of that game that has the Italian guy? Let me check. Right. 4 Against Darkness. 4 Against Darkness. So, there's a lot of talk about like how can we include more non-mechanical play in a dungeon delve type like hex crawl game, right? And there is an easy way to do this, but it's flawed. And the flaw is that if you have a game that is very dependent on quantitative based mechanics, if the game is based around increasing your stats, getting better weapons, getting better equipment, learning new spells, etc., you can very easily introduce an idea of like, oh, you meet a person in this room. You know, you rolled a 6 on this table, and then it was a D66, and you rolled a 34, and that says NPC encounter. And now you go to the NPC encounter, and it is a man named Ron Favreau. Okay. And what does Ron want? Well, Ron is, let's roll again, 34, angry. Okay, and what is Ron angry about? Okay, 21 and 62. Ron is angry about sinking time. Okay, Ron is angry about his carriage is stuck in the mud and it's sinking, and if he doesn't get it out, he's not going to make a delivery in time. Okay. What happens if we help Ron? What happens if we don't? Why would I care unless I care? It's an existential question, right? Because this is what you do see in a lot of very mechanical based type games is they'll have a section on journaling and they'll say, hey, you know what you can do if you like how this game works and you want to, take it to the next level, keep a journal, or you can role play out these scenes. And to me, I always think about somebody. Here's sort of the litmus test for it. If somebody said that to me while I was playing Monopoly, would I want to do that? Would I want to be like, oh, hello, I see that you've got a beautiful property here on Park Place. What's your name? Oh, it's Diane Keaton. Well, Diane, I'm just down the street at the Baltic. Oh, what's that? You say I'm a scum of the earth and I shouldn't be here, right? Like, why would I do that? That's not where I'm like deriving joy from the game. And maybe that's just me, but the question that always stands is like, if you have a game that is very much generative like that, generating these scenarios, overcoming them, growing stronger, how do you create meaningful story in that, meaningful interaction? And right off the bat, you are alone. You're a solo player. right? So you're every NPC. For some people, it feels immersion breaking. The responses aren't very dynamic. And I think without the external arbiter of the DM, sometimes decisions can feel arbitrary. They lack emotional weight. It's just hard to see why we would add that in this game, because it doesn't seem to be the point of it. And I think that there is this is where we start to encounter the meta problem here. The meta problem is that, suppose, let's go back to Gunther's town. Where's Gunther's town? I had it up here before. There we go. All right, so let's go back to Gunther. So Gunther, I go to the shaman's quarters, and again, I haven't played this yet. I'm just making it up. By the south wall is a makeshift bed of rags, twigs, and dried leaves. By the north wall are 2 chests. Okay. And there's a secret door, and I open the secret door, and I go inside. And now the text here, I'm making this up, but I'm just saying, the text here says, "What do you find behind that door?" And you go, "Oh, well, I'm a solo role player. I can easily figure this out, right? I'm going to use my special card deck, and I have these dice for that, and I'm all around creative, and I'm going to use Vox Gravis by Man Alone and Vox Profundus, and he should have called it Vox Profunda. It doesn't. The genders don't match, and you're going to use all these tools, and you're going to come up with it, and it's going to say the shaman's daughter is here, right? And you realize that the shaman has died, and the daughter is kneeling over him and saying, my father." And you know what? Suddenly, this is a rescue. This is a rescue mission. We got to get the daughter out of here. Okay, where do we head next? 18, prison entrance. And then you read the opening of the prison entrance, and it says, at the front of the prison entrance stands the shaman. Now, I get it. I could work that out. I could say, oh, well, it's not the shaman, it's a doppelganger, or surprise, sweetheart, he's alive, right? Yes. But sooner or later, there's going to be a reticence. You're going to feel like either you have spun an impossibly complicated web, or you're going to feel like you don't want to spin any web because it's just going to get unspun. I need more Kanker source stuff. I just want to say this before I apply my Kanka. That's Kanka. Kanka, if you want to sponsor me, I would love that. I just want to point this out. I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding. I did not look anywhere on this page except the left column. And if you look at the right column here, look at that. Now, that's not the shaman's daughter, but just the fact that I said the shaman's daughter, it is almost certain that I saw that out of my peripheral vision and had no idea and just incorporated it. It is very hard to not read. That's all I'm saying. So if your method of adapting a point crawl or anything that is a structured narrative, if your plan is to just say, don't read ahead, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Kanka. This stuff is great. At first it hurts, but it's really good. Actually, I want to see if I can write these out just by talking. Oh, yeah, that works. Oh, crap. Wait a minute. Resource encounters. No. Resource encounters. Environmental encounters. Roleplay based encounter. This is such a waste of. Oh, all right. 1 second. All right, let's just do all these. So, resource, environmental, roleplay, mystery, skill challenges, narrative arc. These are all different sorts of encounters that you can have. Resources could be like loot encounters. Environmental is anything that either presents a challenge or a hardship or just some sort of change, some sort of component of the environment that would change the way that the characters move through it. Skip mystery for a second. Skill challenges, like how do you rate the skill? Is it totally randomized? That's not how it works in a point crawl, right? There in a dungeon delve, the classic thing is even on like the front cover to say this is for these levels, this is for this characters of this type, right? For advanced players, whatever it might be. So if I'm constantly randomizing it, then how do we do that? Are we going to have very short games? Are we going to have very easy games? Maybe it'll work. I don't know, but this is what I'm saying is that the only way to figure this out is to play it. It's to play through one of these and figure out all of these things. And I mean, that's what I did. Like that's essentially what I did to summon all these different encounters and come up with examples of them. But the mystery, the narrative arc, that's a big thing. Is like that is where when we talk about, if here are the general challenges. Okay, inequality of information is not possible unless the inequality of information comes from the information somehow being hidden in the text of the book. Adjustments, dynamic adjustments. You cannot dynamically adjust based on what comes next, as a GM could. I guess you could also call that emergent play. Replayability, obviously, and then like the emotional impact, because that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that a lot of this stuff can feel like you're recreating the group play experience, but it only looks like it. It's like a facsimile of it. It's a plaster cast of it. And so the idea then changes to like, how about instead of trying to remake it, we think about how we can, again, to go back to the main point of this is to replicate the experience rather than trying to replicate like the text or the format. Okay. So here is how we can achieve more dynamic and like get more engaging dynamic experiences, avoiding exhausting stuff, right? Stuff that feels like a chore. Allowing players to have choices that have outcomes that make sense, follow some sort of narrative arc, and also like feel meaningful. All right. So I would say that the first thing that I'm thinking is you limit the amount of actions a character can do in a room. All right. Like you create a menu of non-combat actions. Now, I understand that a lot of games have like this and present it as skills, but it goes further than that. Say that you make it examine, interact, search, and move. Those four: examine, interact, search, and move. Using one of those costs some sort of abstract currency, and I think, looking at one of the best sources on this, Mythic, is like, this is kind of like what we're trying to do with the fate chart, right? The concept behind the fate chart is or the thing that's unique about it, which even though I don't use Mythic, and maybe I should more, but even though, it's just not my preferred thing, I have to recognize the fact that this is an extremely valuable insight, in that like certain things heighten the situation in real life to some extent, and especially in narrative, right? Like the heat rises, you know, and that's what the chaos rank does in a way, is like the more things start spinning out of control, the more that the odds change. And the idea is as you move around this fate chart, you're going to have more satisfying, appropriate, and proportional events. And so that's kind of like what I'm thinking is some sort of framework for more limited, flexible but limited choices. And then based on those actions, you can reveal details based on that, but there is a risk in that. It's not like a true risk to the player, okay? It's not like you have to separate out the player and the player character. I'm sorry. It's not a true risk to the player character. So you can't say like, "Oh, every time the player character examines something, a piano, the rope that's holding a grand piano over their head like loses one piece of twine." It's not like that. It's a meta narrative thing. Is that it represents that they're taking more time, they're being more nosy, they're exposing themselves to whoever else is there. They're doing potentially, things that they're not supposed to be doing, looking in other people's stuff, taking other people's stuff. And from a story standpoint, there is this heightening, right? Heightening happens, but this is what's great. As a story standpoint, it heightens, but as a game, from a gameplay standpoint, there also suddenly becomes a reason why we would do any narrative things in a dungeon crawl, right? We do them because those narrative things could reveal for us new treasures, new passageways, new companions, but also it's a risk because it can also heighten our danger. So this is I want to make a series of videos called like now I've said all this, could someone make this for me? Obviously we want to do oracles, random encounters, interacting with the room. The other thing is if we could figure out a way to make reliable progressive room descriptions. This is a challenge of how to write it and then literally how to print it, because again, the eye just sort of reads everything on the page. But it's almost as if like, even if you were to read ahead on the room into a territory of a part of its description that you do not have access to yet, because you have not pulled the lever, you have not read the runes, whatever, it's like that doesn't even exist then. You can read it, but it doesn't exist. Or there's several possible things that could exist, right? Now, this does create some layered complexities, okay, to say the least. Because, let's do an example. Suppose that I said, I know everyone loves how I hold my pencil here. Suppose that I said we have this menu, right? And just so that I'm not being confusing. Okay, examine, interact, search, move. There's probably some other ones, but it's just ones I'm thinking of. Okay, so for each room, right, you walk in and right off the bat, it gives you a description. It says, there's a room. It has red curtains. There's I guess I could just kind of draw it. Like at the far end of the room, there is like a staircase, a small half staircase with 4 stairs. On top of that staircase is a stage that terminates in sort of like pitch black. You can't see beyond it. And on the side of the stage is some red curtains that are partially pulled back, right? So it's a stage. It's a stage. Okay, let me just. All right. So you have a stage there. Now what? Well, you can use this menu of choices here, or you could just leave. But if you just leave, I suppose that can carry a risk as well. But if you do choose any of these, say you choose examine, and maybe there's clues right up front that like make it more prudent to do one than the other, right? So like there's a candlestick on the middle of the stage. Do we inspect that? Do we search under the tablecloth where the candle's on the table, whatever it is? And then from there, if it's successful, you then maybe roll on a table. But this is where it gets extremely complicated, right? Because you could roll on that table, and then you could have you could roll a d6 to like what happens when you interact with the candle, and you have 6 options then. And if we want to maintain consistent lore, we have to like respect the branches of every single one of those options. And if we don't, then it has no reactivity, meaning that like it's only the illusion of branching pathways and choice. It's not the actuality. But the idea is if we can progressively reveal things, it stops a person from overdoing it in terms of creating conflicts in lore that will create complications later that have to be retconned. And I think the driving question is like, what is next? What is next? What is next? But what I'm talking about right now is not relevant to the actual issue at hand, which is like, how do we adapt this? Like, let's not think about creating a game. How do we adapt a game that already exists? Okay. So, a leech singer. I love this. All right, we're in the desolate fortress. And we go into C3. It's 20 by 30. The walls of the fortress are constructed from thick mud, rotting logs, and cadavers. At the entrance is a 15-foot tall, I never know how to say this, portcullis doorway. Its frames crafted from metal and bone. Growing on the front of the gate is a head of a large undead crow with greasy black feathers. All right, so I can stop right there, although I did see that it says under that, the crow. But, you know, we'll have a little bit of flexibility with ourselves. We'll say that's going to happen. So what do I do now? Well, I think the way that we modify this is a small modification, but it's meaningful. Rather than saying what we're going to do next, you say what you plan on doing next. So like, this is what I would want to do. And what that does is it allows for you to enjoy the surprise of discovery without interfering with the lore, without shaking up the progression of the dungeon, and being okay with the fact that like what you wanted to do might not be possible or might not be possible in the way that you'd want. Okay. So I'm going to read it again, and I'm actually going to do this. And I have not read this yet. All right. Actually, I'm going to actually cover it so I can't even see it. 1 second. Let me find my little index card. Okay. C3, which is here. 20 by 30 feet. The walls of the fortress are constructed from thick mud, rotting logs, and cadavers. At the entrance is a 15-foot tall doorway. Its frame crafted from metal and bone. Growing on the front of the gate is the head of a large undead crow with greasy black feathers. So I have to put my like Morgborg hat on here. understand what it means to say a head is growing from a door. So what would I do? What I would do if it were possible is honest to God, I would walk by it. I would walk by it. And I know that that is probably the most boring thing to do, but I would walk by it. Okay. So now that I've made my choice of what I would do or would prefer to do or what would plan to do, I then go to the next bullet. All right. The crow is cunning but lacks intelligence. In order to be let in, the carrion sigil located in the lost city, G, must be presented as evidence of loyalty to the carrion prince. Okay, I have a new piece of information here. The crow is protecting this door. All right. Now, it's an RPG, right? So I could do whatever I want. That's one of the things that separates this from other games. Even the most open world video game, you could do anything you want in this game. Oh my gosh, have you played the new Zelda game? You can eat your feet. Whatever. There is a limit to what you can actually do based on the graphics, the mechanics, everything. That limit might be very high. It might blow you away, but still, it's like Link can do 100 things. Okay. But not me. I can do infinity, whatever I think of, right? And so I want to preserve that capability. So I try to walk by, and then I discovered that this crow is guarding the door. In order to be let in, I have to give some sigil that's in G, right? Now I look at G, since I've never played this before, but pretending I have. I look at G, D, E, G. Now, I don't know how this works, like if because G comes later, there's no way I would have been there yet, or if that's something I could have chosen to go to. But I look and G is a lost city. And say right away, I go, well, I haven't been there yet. That's it. I don't read anything else. And I say, I haven't been there yet. So the situation now is that I wanted to walk by. I wanted to go in, but the crow's guarding the door, and they want something that I don't have. I have to have a carrion sigil to go by. Well, my choices now, or the ones that I'm deciding between in my head are, I can try to trick the crow. I can go and try to find the sigil from the lost city. I can try to run by the crow. I can try to attack the crow. All right. And so from that, I am going to make a choice in terms of like what I would want to do. And I'm going to say that I am going to try to run by. I don't want any trouble, but let's be honest, this crow is sitting, it's a head on a wall. So as long as I don't get within like the range to have my butt cheeks nipped by the beak, I'm good. So that's what I'm going to do. All right. And before I even roll, right? Because it's like, oh, I can roll for agility or dodging or acrobatics, whatever it would be. I now move down to the next choice. Attacking the crow or attempt. So this works very well. It's quite a relief. Because I'm very far in the video. So if it didn't work well, I wouldn't restart it. Attacking the crow or attempting to bypass the entrance causes the portcullis to morph its frame into that of a massive metal and bone golem. It blocks the entryway and attacks. So I could tell you that if I was playing this, I would have to fight that golem. And is it? Yep. Okay. So yeah. So it has next is like a stat block for that. All right. I'm solo playing now, so I can try to do this a different way. I can say, well, even though this text didn't offer me this option, my character is very fast. Okay. And so let's look. Does the golem have, any sort of stat that would indicate its speed or its quickness or anything like that? Not really, but it's big and it's strong and it's like a boss, right? So I would, whatever scale I'm using, whether I'm using Mythic, whether I'm using, really doesn't matter. But whatever it is, I scale it up to say that I want to run by this thing. I want to go for it. And so I'll come up with a test. I'll figure out my target number, and before I roll, I will make clear what my rewards and what my risks are. Okay. And so this one's pretty obvious. Reward is I get by unscathed, I get to go in. The risk can't just be that I fight the golem, because that would have happened whether I took this chance or not, right? There has to be some risk involved. There has to be a punishment for reaching for the stars. You can't teach kids to just reach for the stars. There's got to be some sort of punishment, right? And so I would say that if I fail, then I lose my initiative for the first turn, or whatever the mechanic of the game is. I'm ambushed. I roll with a bane, whatever it is. That's what happens for the first turn. And in that way, I have maintained my adherence, my fidelity to the script. But at the same time, I'm not doing the total surfs up solo thing where I just go, all right, I'll read the whole entry and then I'll just kind of like make it into my own thing. It's not a point crawl then. What are we doing a point crawl for? Or what are we doing a dungeon delve for? Why not just like use Ironsworn Delve? Why not just, that's better, right? Like that's better at doing that thing that you want, or even adapting like Trophy Gold, right? And just using those ideas to abstract, or Moria, Wandering Moria, like the new one. The old one, I do believe, was like a fully fleshed out room by room descriptor dungeon. But why not? Because if in for a penny, in for a pound. But if there is something that let's say is appealing to you about this idea, is appealing to you about just like working through this thing. I mean, I don't know exactly why, but the idea of like coloring in these maps and feeling that I like totally explored this place in some ways this feels like what I want in so much in solo play is like to have my world, right? Like I could be at work, but in my head I'm here. It's a space of freedom, right? It's like a little space of freedom, which the more that we create those spaces of freedom in our intellectual, personal life, we can start to feel more free in the other stuff, because it's like, oh yeah, like people can't take this from me. And I know I'm going a little too far with that, but there's also this like sense of just like like accomplishment, ownership, gradual revelation. Because and I know this is a bit of anathema coming from me, but sometimes I do ask myself, like, why get any of this? Why not just sit down with a sheet of paper and just solo play? I know I can do it. I can sit down with no system, with a couple dice. Maybe I'll take the fate mill with me. Maybe I'll take my letter dice to randomize names. Ingrid, how loud was that? I'm so sorry. But I could just do it. I don't need anything. But there's something special about meeting halfway with the creator of a game and like entering into their world and being able to have some of that work done for you. If you stuck it out, congratulations, especially because the payoff was not as impactful as I'd hoped for. As I was saying it, I'm realizing, man, I think I got more questions than solutions here, or maybe the solutions are a bit abstract at this point. Let me know if you'd like to see me do like a point crawl and try to solo adapt it. Let me know if you've done this, if you have any strategies for it, if you have any tools. Let me know. I'm curious about it. I'm interested in it. But I want to do it. So that's already decided. And I do see on drive-thru right now that there is a Tales of Carcosa, which is available, and that one looks to be pretty good as well. I do have one last thing to say, and this is not really a tooting of my own horn. I guess it is, but I made my supplement called To the Green, which is a Dragonbane supplement that's available on drive-thru RPG. It is a point crawl or a dungeon delve, but I made it for a solo player. And so all of my questions here have specific skill checks. They have specific, do you choose this or this? If you have this, then you can do that. If you don't have that. And then there are some things where I actually reward narrative, where I say, like, if you can come up with a poem on the spot, or I don't think I say that, but I think it might be like a song or a joke or something like that, then you can, roll with advantage or something like that. And so this is like this is how I wish, all of these were written, but they're not. They're written for groups of 4 or 5 people. We just have to deal with the fact that most people who play tabletop role-playing games do not want to play them solo. But I do think that there's some action that we can get into and that we can do it well. And this actually is the thought I'll leave you on. This is actually pretty good in terms of absconding a little bit the hidden pieces, is actually changing the color of the text. Because at least that way, I don't accidentally hoover up a bunch of extra information. That's all I got. Let me know what you think, and happy point crawling. I never come up with it should be strong. I should say, whatever you do in life, always do it with all of your heart and with all of your might.